Imagine this. You're flying at 30,000 feet. The cabin is calm, the seatbelt sign is off, and the world below is just clouds and silence. Then something changes. The steady roar of the engines fades into nothing. No vibration, no thrust, just the sound of air rushing past the windows. At that moment, you realize something terrifying. The engines have stopped. There's no turning back, no pulling over, no pause button. You are gliding in a 200-ton aircraft over miles of empty sky. Sounds impossible, but it has happened. And when it does, every second becomes a test of skill, science, and human composure. So, what really happens when thrust stops at 30,000 feet? Can a passenger jet glide safely to the ground? Can pilots bring engines back to life midair? And what are the chances it could happen again? This is the mystery, the science, and the reality behind one of aviation's most feared scenarios. This is Jet Engine Mysteries. What if thrust stops at 30,000 feet? The jet engine is one of humankind's greatest inventions. A perfect balance of air, fuel, and fire. Every second, thousands of gallons of air are sucked into the front, compressed, ignited, and blasted out the back at nearly the speed of sound. That's thrust, the invisible force that keeps hundreds of thousands of aircraft aloft every day. Inside a single engine, the temperatures can exceed 1,500 degrees Celsius. Turbine blades spin faster than a race car engine, and every component is engineered to survive extremes that no human could endure. Each one is designed with incredible precision because when you're 30,000 feet above the ground, there's no room for failure. For decades, engineers have refined and tested these machines to near perfection. But even perfection can falter, and when it does, every pilot's training is put to the ultimate test. A jet engine doesn't just turn off. It takes a chain of rare, catastrophic events to silence it. But it can happen, and when it does, everything changes in seconds. Inside the cockpit, alarms sound, gauges drop, and thrust levers become useless. The flight deck goes quiet except for the rush of wind. At 30,000 feet, there's no thrust, but there's still lift. A modern airliner becomes a massive glider, descending in a controlled glide toward the Earth. For every 1,000 feet of altitude, the aircraft can travel roughly 2 miles forward. At cruising altitude, that means nearly 60 miles of potential distance. 60 miles to find a runway, an open field, or the sea. The pilot's job is now a battle against time, distance, and gravity. And the only weapon they have is training. When thrust disappears, gravity takes over. The aircraft must trade altitude for speed to keep the wings generating lift. Fly too slow, and the aircraft stalls, losing all lift. Fly too fast, and you risk losing control. It's a delicate, exact science. Even without power, hydraulic systems continue running through emergency turbines. Batteries and air-driven generators keep the essential instruments alive. Every second counts. The pilots calculate glide angles, heading, and terrain. If they can keep the right speed, usually around 250 knots, they can stretch every foot of altitude into miles of range. Some aircraft can even restart an engine midair through a process called windmilling, using airflow to spin the turbines fast enough to reignite fuel. But that requires perfect conditions, airspeed, altitude, and temperature all in sync. If that fails, the goal becomes survival. Find a place to land and make it count. History has seen moments where engines stopped and humans refused to surrender. Air Transat Flight 236, 2001. Over the Atlantic Ocean, both engines failed due to a massive fuel leak. The crew glided their powerless Airbus A330 for 19 minutes, covering 75 miles, and landed safely in the Azores. Not one life was lost. British Airways Flight 9, 1982. While flying over Indonesia, volcanic ash from Mount Galunggung choked all 4 engines. The plane descended silently from 37,000 feet to 13,000. Then, miraculously, one engine reignited, then another, and the crew brought the aircraft home. U.S. Airways Flight 1549, 2009. A bird strike over New York silenced both engines minutes after takeoff. Captain Chesley "Sully" Sullenberger made a split-second decision to land in the Hudson River. It was the perfect ditching, 155 lives saved. Each of these events rewrote aviation history. Each one proved that human instinct, training, and engineering could turn catastrophe into survival. For something as powerful as a jet engine to fail, the cause is never simple. Bird strikes can destroy fan blades, shattering the precision balance that keeps turbines spinning. Fuel starvation, whether from leaks, contamination, or miscalculation, cuts off the engine's lifeblood. Volcanic ash melts inside the turbine, coating internal parts in glass-like residue. And ice crystals, invisible to radar, can form deep inside compressors, blocking airflow and starving combustion. Each event triggers a redesign, a safeguard, or a new layer of technology. Sensors now monitor thousands of parameters every second: pressure, heat, vibration, airflow, looking for the smallest sign of trouble. Modern engines even send data back to ground engineers mid-flight. Failures have become so rare, they're almost statistically impossible. But still, engineers keep asking, what if? A pilot's mind is the last line of defense against disaster. When thrust stops, training begins. Every pilot in the world practices dual-engine failure procedures in simulators that recreate total silence. No power, no thrust, no comfort. They learn how to restart systems, conserve altitude, and find landing zones with calm precision. They memorize checklists, run through mental drills, and make decisions faster than instinct can think. It's not just skill, it's psychology. The best pilots train their minds to stay ahead of fear, to focus when every alarm screams otherwise. When the impossible happens, they don't ask why. They act because lives depend on it. Modern jet engines are designed not just to perform, but to survive failure. Each has dual igniters, redundant fuel systems, and independent electronic control units. Even if both engines shut down, power is restored by a ram air turbine, a small propeller that drops into the airstream to generate emergency electricity. The odds of total thrust loss in both engines at the same time? Less than 1 in a billion flight hours. Yet engineers still simulate every possible failure. Lightning strikes, fuel starvation, ice ingestion, and even bird impacts, to make sure no scenario is left untested. The result? Today's jet engines are among the most reliable machines ever created. The next generation of engines is rewriting the rules of flight. Massive turbofans like the Rolls-Royce Ultrafan and the G9X are more efficient, more powerful, and smarter than ever. They use carbon composites, adaptive blades, and AI-based health monitoring that can predict issues before they occur. Hybrid propulsion is on the horizon, electric fans that could keep an aircraft gliding even if fuel engines fail. Some concepts even include distributed thrust, multiple smaller engines working in harmony so one failure never becomes total loss. The era of the silent glide may soon be a thing of the past. But as long as humans fly, the question, what if thrust stops, will always drive innovation. 30,000 feet, every sound matters. Every vibration, every hum, every flicker of power is a reminder of how fragile flight can be and how extraordinary it truly is. The idea of thrust stopping is terrifying, but it's also proof of humanity's greatest strength, our ability to plan, adapt, and endure. Because even when engines fail, pilots fight. Even when silence falls, training speaks louder. And every time a plane lands safely, it's a triumph of trust in people, in technology, and in the endless pursuit of perfection. The sky has its mysteries, And sometimes the most powerful story of all begins when the engines go quiet. This has been Jet Engine Mysteries. What if thrust stops at 30,000 feet? If you love exploring the power, science, and secrets of flight, check out more stories on our channel. Subscribe to Skyforge Aviation, where the world's greatest machines take to the skies. Fly safe, stay curious,